Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys Back. This is Hunter, David, Steven, and Shane. Say what up, boys.
What's going on?
Hey.
What's up, nerds?
We are back. This time, we are taking a look at the brand new Commander Masters, which is just a reprint set, I thought, until they announced all the Precon decks, and the Precons have new cards in them. So, we're going to be talking about all of the face commanders and the secondary commanders from every deck, talking about if they're a good commander, what we would do to build around them, give them a good grade, give them a bad grade, we'll find out. So, first and foremost, with Commander Masters, the first card we are talking about is Anikthea, Hand of Erebos. It is 2, a white, a black, and a green for a 4/4 legendary enchantment creature demigod. It has Menace. It says other enchantment creatures you control have Menace, and whenever Anikthea enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to one target non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 3/3 black zombie creature in addition to its other types. This was the face commander of Enduring Enchantments. Steven, you had the ability to go ahead and upgrade this precon. What do we think about Anikthea?
I mean, to be honest with you, Hunter, I think this is probably the best commander out of the four. I'm not saying that because I helmed the deck for the upgrades, but, I think we've said it many times on this channel. Anytime you get to do graveyard shenanigans for free, it's really, really fun. This is in a color scheme to get stuff into your graveyard really quickly and just has some more fun on top of it. I really love this card. It's a great value engine, draws you a ton of cards, especially with the cards in the precon, and obviously you can build around this card as well. It's an all-star, man.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Anikthea, this is... Enchantment decks, just in general, always seem to have a really, really powerful effect. This just takes it to another level of bringing all your enchantments back that got away, or, like you said, just throwing the enchantments into the graveyard just to bring them back for quick, easy value. And Shane, your famous phrase, what is it?
Free spells are never bad.
That's right.
Yeah, this is like the cavalry charge of enchantments, dude. This deck was really cool to see it do its thing. This card was nuts.
I really like that comparison that Shane has too. Like, this is I don't know, it does a ton. It's got the graveyard recursion aspect to it too. I love that this not only has an ETB, but like that's an ability that you can continue to hit every single turn. And I think straight out of the box, this is actually probably the best commander out of the four. And I feel like if you were to go about upgrading it, it is still the best out of the four. I think this is one that starts off pretty good and can get really crazy whenever you really do throw some money at this.
I think the only downside there when we're comparing it to the Cavalry Charge is that you do have to exile that thing to bring it back. You can't do it more than once.
I mean,
no.
The upside too, though, is that like there are some really big, mean, scary enchantments that you would want to recur here. So even if you are having to exile it, I feel like it's fine. I feel like the potential of things for you to recur is just so high in a deck like this that this commander is fantastic.
I agree, and the artwork is stunning. Let's move on to the grades. Steven, what are you giving Anikthea?
I mean, to be quite honest with you, I know this might be a little aggressive for the first card, but I'm actually going to give her an A. I think that Anikthea just does a lot of amazing things, and it's really a great deck, especially if you kind of build around the fun that you kind of see in the $100 video or any of the precon upgrades that I did. I think this card's just a stellar all-star, man.
I'm going to stick with a B for Anikthea only because the ability to make those come back from the graveyard are fantastic. However, they do come back as creatures, easier to remove. That's why I'm giving it a B here.
Steven, if I could be completely honest with you, this card is amazing. And I'm going to still give it a B, though. But it is amazing.
I actually was originally going to give this a B, but I mean, I just feel like this is just so leaps and bounds. I don't know. It does so much. I'm going to give it an A. I'm going to go with Steven on this one.
Starting off the video strong, Anikthea is getting the average grade of an A. Moving on to the backup commander of Enduring Enchantments, this is Narci, Fable Singer. 1, a white, a black, and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature human bard. It has lifelink, and it says whenever you sacrifice an enchantment, draw a card, and whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is that saga's mana value. Once again, Steven, what do we think of Narci? I believe you took this out of your precon deck, but as a saga commander, seems solid.
Yeah, I hate to say it because I love Tom a lot, but I think I would actually prefer Narci over Tom. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but there are a lot of effects in this deck that you could sacrifice enchantments. And with sagas basically always being enchantments, the fact that you can just sacrifice those permanents and, still maybe recur them in the future, get a ton of card draw, and then make all your opponents lose life and you gain life. I mean, this is a pretty solid saga commander.
Can you correct me if I'm wrong though? When a saga gets to its final lore chapter, aren't you actually sacrificing it?
You are.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah, but there's
Boom.
ways to sacrifice it earlier too.
Oh well, I feel like I don't want to get to the end on those though. Come on.
No, of course, but I mean, if somebody tries to destroy your stuff,
Yeah, this
There are
card
the
seems very
new-
fun.
There are the new sagas too, with the read ahead mechanic where you can just trigger that final ability immediately. Get that final ability on a saga and hit your opponents for X life. I mean, it's probably not going to be too impactful with the life, but still pretty interesting.
I think I actually like the first ability on this card a little bit more than the second one. Just like whenever you sacrifice an enchantment, draw a card. That's a fantastic draw engine there. The upside with her second ability of the sagas, I think, is cool. And don't get me wrong, like a sagas deck, I think is totally fine. I don't think that I quite see the power level of it. And even with the drain effect, I don't know how good of a card or how good that strategy is. I think it's fun, and I really like this card. I love the design of it. I just don't think this is like super powerful.
The more and more we see sagas being printed in each new set, there's always going to be like those brand new sagas that are just the more they just keep adding chapters to sagas, which I think is crazy. I think this card will be more powerful down the line. Let's move on to the grades. Steven, we'll start with you again. Narci, Fable Singer.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and give this. Oh man, that's a tough one. I think I'm gonna stick with a C. I'm not really big on like a saga deck, although like I said, I've talked about Tom 1,000 times. I feel like at this point, but this card's great. I just haven't played around with it too much to kind of give it that B level.
I think I'm gonna just kind of stick around the same once again with Steven on this. I really do like this card, and I think this would be a fun commander. I just don't necessarily think that the power level is like super push right now. I'm gonna give this a C.
I think we're all in the same area, man. I think we're all giving it a C.
Yeah, I'm giving it a C too. I agree with you completely, David. I think down the line it could be a higher grade, but right now Narci, Fable Singer is getting a C from me. And with that, the average is going to be a C. Next up, we're going to Commodore Guff. 1, a blue, a red, and a white. For a legendary planeswalker with a starting loyalty of 5, it has a passive ability that says at the beginning of your end step, put a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control. It has a +1 that says create a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap, add 1 red. Spend this mana only to cast a planeswalker spell, and a -3 that says you draw X cards, and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. Obviously, Commodore Guff can be your commander. This was the face commander of Planeswalker Party. I had the opportunity to go ahead and build this. My only downside, and I will continue to say it as I did in my 100 and 300 upgrades, is that it is slow. I think if you don't have another Planeswalker before Commodore Guff, this passive ability doesn't do anything because it can't target itself. The fact that it only makes a 1/1 red wizard creature token that can only tap for red instead of the other 2 colors that's in its commander identity is bizarre to me, and the fact that you can't do it immediately is also making it a little slow. I get it that it can be up on blocks, but it just screams a bit slow to me.
I just hate planeswalkers as commanders.
Because commander damage isn't a thing.
I mean, I don't. So I don't really think I don't care about commander damage. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'll play Voltron all day. Don't get me wrong, but like for me, planeswalkers are just they are a little bit harder to remove, obviously, but I think for me it's more of like I'll just attack it and kill it. Like I don't. I have a flyer in the air. It's dead. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't even prevent flying damage to it. What I will say about this card is I do think it's kind of scary in the aspect of like, you have your Super Friend style decks, and I kind of saw some stuff the Hunter did in the $100 upgrade, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's terrifying, but it was terrifying because of the other planeswalkers. This one just kind of helped you out because it had the draw engine and so on and so forth. But maybe I just didn't see it pop off enough. I don't know.
I actually really don't like planeswalkers as commanders either. I feel like they really slow the game down because this is going to come in and then it incentivizes your opponents to attack it, so they're not hitting your life total, and then they're just going to kill this thing anyways. I actually don't think that even with the token production that this thing does, that it protects itself very well. And then my biggest downside to this is I feel like we've hit a point where if you want to play a Super Friends deck, you have amazing options for your commanders in 5 colors, and this is just really, I don't think this even kind of holds a candle to them. So I don't really know why I would want to play this even for a Planeswalker specific deck.
I guess I'll be the broken record and say, Planeswalker slow.
Yeah, and that's, to go off of David's point and your point, and I guess all our points really with us saying that this card's really slow, it's just, it does make the game go longer because the second a Planeswalker hits the field, even if it's bad, I still want to get rid of it. I don't really want a Planeswalker to stay on the field because normally they kind of start to give you a little bit more advantage. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe if Hunter had some extra time, but then you're like, well, if the deck needs that much time to start going off, is it really worth it,
Don't get me wrong, though. It can pop off. We did see, this video is going to come out after our 100. We did see Hunter pop off, so there's a possibility, obviously, but it wasn't because of this commander. It was because of other Planeswalkers.
And that's why I didn't really want to bring that analogy up too much. Well, not analogy, but I didn't want to bring that point up because Hunter popped off in the $100 video, but it was because of the cards he added to the deck,
Yeah.
100%. This is a support commander rather than doing stuff with the commander itself. I don't know. Like I said, I just wish he wasn't as slow as he is. Let's move on to the grades. I'm going to start it off. He's just slow. He's average. He's a C.
I was going to say middle of the road C, yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I'm going to give this a C, and it's not because I want to. I really do think this card's a D, but the card draw is really nice, and the proliferation on your Planeswalkers is really good, so there's that.
I'm not going to be afraid to take that plunge. This card is a D. I don't know why I would want to play this in a Planeswalker deck. This can be support, but this is never going to be at the helm.
Commodore Guff gets the average grade of a C. Moving on to the backup commander of the same deck. This is Leori, Sparktouched Hunter. It is 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 white for a 3/3 legendary creature elemental cat. It's got flying and vigilance, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose a Planeswalker type. Until end of turn, whenever you activate an ability of a Planeswalker of that type, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copies. Again, I had the ability to upgrade Planeswalker Party. I did look at this card as a potential commander. I did not remove this card from the deck just because we are running enough of the same Planeswalker types in the deck where it could potentially work down the line. But the ability to where you have to deal damage to a player to actually activate the ability just kind of sucks. I know it's got flying and vigilance, which is a cool way of evading, but I don't know. Once again, it just seemed a little slow in my opinion. Don't forget that when you activate an ability, yes, you're copying it, but you are not doubling the amount of counters from that activation cost. So it is, if it's like a +2, it's still just a +2, it just happens twice.
I could see it being pretty cool if you had multiple Teferis, multiple anything, but it also can just be situational, right? So if you want to activate one of them, you just name it and then copy it.
Yeah, if you're running this in just like a Teferi tribal, Chandra tribal, Elspeth tribal type of deck, it's really good because you'll just name Teferi and then every single one of your Teferis have double deactivations for that turn, which is pretty cool.
But even if you don't, though, just situationally being able to choose which one you get to double, it doesn't seem horrible.
I mean, I really wish this card would have been an extra 2 mana or even 3 mana and possibly see that go from choose Planeswalker type to all Planeswalkers. I think that would have been an all-star of a card. Slightly broken, obviously. But I think I like this card. I do enjoy the evasion with the flying and the vigilance, not being really afraid to swing with it. I do feel like anytime you get to double up on a Planeswalker activation, it's pretty good.
This is right up your alley too, right, Steven? Perfect mana cost.
I mean, and that's why I really do enjoy this card. a 3-mana commander is like the sweet spot for me. I kind of enjoy it. Comes down, play your planeswalker the next turn, swing in with this, get those 2 activations, and just start having some fun, man.
I love the fact that you talk about how you wish this costed more so it could have a bigger ability, and then you go back to I love small things.
Well, no, I'm saying like
It's all over the place. dude.
so here's the thing: the ability for a 3-mana cost, I think, is great because you're choosing planeswalker type. Obviously, if you have multiple Teferis or Elspeths, good for you. But if you just have like one, like if you just have Guff, you know what I mean? I think for that, it's a good 3-mana. I'm saying that if it were to be a 6 or a 5.
I actually disagree with you on this one. I think that I prefer this at lower cost. That way you can get this out first, and then this also kind of like pseudo can protect your planeswalkers, because this thing does have vigilance and it's got flying, so it's probably going to always be able to be up for blocks. So your opponents just can't swing in and kill off your Teferi, and then if you do decide to like double down on that and make like a Chandra specific deck where you're running a ton of those, I do feel like that ability can really pop off. I know that you're not adding loyalty to him, so you're not helping him ult any faster, but still, I mean, like you can get pretty nutty with this kind of ability. I actually like this card quite a bit more than I like Guff. Or Gruff, I'm sorry.
It's Guff.
No, it's Guff.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I had it right the first time. Guff. That just doesn't sound like it should be a name.
I also want to point out, though, that this literally does nothing if you don't have a planeswalker on the field.
Yep.
I mean,
So what you're saying is I have to build around the card?
That's usually how it works, but it
At a-
doesn't do anything.
Hope you drew him.
No. You better
At a
better hope you have one.
at a very bare minimum, I mean, this still gets in for 3 damage maybe every turn, so at least it's dealing more damage than the other option.
True. Moving on to the grades. Still sticking middle of the road here. I'm giving Leori a C.
Yeah, I'm not impressed. I'm still gonna give it a C, middle of the road.
I mean, I'm not debating between a D and a C, so I guess that's good because I'm going to give this a C.
I think this is better than Guff. I still don't think I would ever want to put this as the helm of a Planeswalker deck. So since it's better than Guff, we're going to give it a C.
Leori gets the average grade of a C. Moving on to another deck, Sliver Swarm, helmed by Sliver Gravemother. It's a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green for a 6/6 legendary creature, Sliver. It says the legend rule doesn't apply to slivers you control, and each Sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. This has Encore 5, which means you can pay 5, exile this card from your graveyard. For each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn. If able, they gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. Shane, you upgraded Sliver Swarm. What do we think of the Sliver Gravemother?
I like this card a lot. I will say right off the bat that I do not think this is the strongest Sliver by any means. There are other stronger ones to be your commander, but this one having the specialty of carrying what's in your graveyard and being able to play those again, so it has a Sliver recursion theme, I think is really cool. I don't think we've seen anything like that before. Typically, you just build a big board and hope they don't board wipe. So this time, at least now when they board wipe, if it's not in exile, I will preface that big time again. If it's not in exile, you'll have a great time. If it is in exile, however, you will do absolutely nothing. And with that, I think that's where the commander faltered for me, is the fact that when I played this card, I did not have a graveyard the entire time. And I'm not exaggerating. I did not have a graveyard. So if you're playing with a lot of exile removal, which you will be in commander, that's like the predominant way to board wipe or get rid of things, you're going to be in trouble. So that's
Yeah, I
what
know
think.
you're a Sliver player. You have a Sliver deck. Is
Yeah.
this? I know you said this isn't the best Sliver commander. However, would you have put it into the Sliver deck you have?
Totally. Oh yeah, 100%. I think this is a great. I mean, again, I still like this as a commander. I'll still play it as a commander because in my mind, they're just completely 2 different avenues I'm going down.
I think this is really I think it's a unique take on slivers, and that's why I like this card, because it gives you a different avenue for you to approach how you build the deck. I think Encore can be an incredibly powerful ability, but I do think that you probably need to be playing around with this a little bit more, where you're self-milling or you're specifically targeting cards to put in your graveyard. That way that Encore is actually a really powerful ability. You're getting exactly what you want from those creatures. I don't know if I would play this for like a traditional Sliver deck over one of the other Sliver Lords, one of the other legendary creatures. But I do like this card.
Yeah, I like this card too. Obviously, 5 mana for a 6/6 is already just value. Granted, it is in 5 different colors, so it's a little harder to get. I think Encore as an ability is a kind of like win in the moment because those tokens will be getting exiled. So I don't know. I think Sliver Gravemother is cool.
Well, guys, I heard a lot of negative things here. And I would just like to say, everyone at home, disregard all those negative things because this card is great.
I wasn't that negative.
This card is great. I love this card so much. As the secondary Sliver player in the group, but as a 5-color player in general, this is probably one of my favorite Slivers. The other ones do some really fun things, whether you're searching, indestructible, cascading, whatever have you. I think this is a super strong effect. I know it sounds kind of silly because you're like, oh well, you get to just exile. You're only getting 3 of them. You get 3 slivers that can produce mana, and you have a ton of slivers out already, and you get a sliver that produces haste, and you're just putting more into your graveyard. You are about to have the wildest time with Encore. It's not even funny. I think this is a super strong deck, and if it starts popping off and you do nothing to stop it, it is just it's a blast cannon.
I also find it interesting. I forgot to mention that it seems like a good way to avoid commander attacks later in the game. Meaning if this dies, if you've cast it twice already, which would already be 9 mana, you can put this in your graveyard, Encore for just 5 generic. Seems good.
Yeah, if they kill it, let me tell you, dude. Sometimes they don't kill it; they exile it. It's great.
Sometimes you don't get red mana,
Sometimes you don't get red mana.
Let's move on to the grades. Shane, what are you giving Sliver Gravemother?
Despite what Steven said, I don't think I talked too much shit about it. I do like this card a lot, but it's still going to be middle of the road because I like the other ones just that much better. So I'm giving it a C.
I completely agree with you. I think the other slivers that are 5-color are just a grade above it. But this is going to be a C.
I think this is a really cool card, and I'm glad that this one exists. But ultimately, I do think that you have to build around this kind of in a weird way that the tribe typically doesn't. Or you kind of have to water down the sliver aspect of the deck to really get this to work. So I'm going to stick in the middle of the road for here. I'm going to give this a C as well.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with everyone. And I'm just going to say that built properly, I don't even think you have to build around the fact that this is Encore. I think this slips into any sliver deck you're playing, whether you're doing Cascade, whether you're doing Indestructible or just searching for stuff. I think this is great. So I'm actually going to give this an A because I am high on this card.
Well, because you gave it an A, Sliver Gravemother gets the average grade of a B. Moving on to the backup commander for the Sliver Swarm deck. This is Rukarumel Biologist. It is a white, blue, black, red, green, 3/3 legendary creature human wizard. It says as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. You can also pay 3, tap it to create a 1/1 colorless Sliver creature token. Jane, Sliver guy, what do we think of this backup commander for your deck?
This backup commander I actually took out of my upgrade because I think it wants to go down a different avenue. And I'm not quite sure what that avenue is, honestly. So David and I were talking, and I feel like it's just making your slivers, or like what am I gonna do? Like you're gonna name a different creature type, and make your slivers that creature type. But I wasn't really sure what this card did, so maybe you guys can enlighten me.
I think it turns any deck into a tribe.
Yeah.
Straight up. Just doesn't matter what you name because all your creatures are now this, that. Slivers, I don't even think it matters here. Like you're basically just making a 1/1 whatever. It doesn't even matter that it says Sliver.
Naming is already going to be a tribe, right?
Yeah, you're going to be naming a tribe, so it makes all of your creatures whatever tribe you named. So if you have a Sliver deck and you want them to all to be dragons, you cast this and you say dragons.
I guess I don't know what that. Okay, I don't know why that's good.
I feel like I'm kind of with Shane on this one. I see the appeal of like this makes like for a 5-color legendary for whatever tribe you want, but at the same time, if you're specifically wanting to build around a tribe, you're probably going to include a critical threshold of that tribe anyway. Normally, if you're playing tribal, it's because like they benefit from having each other in play. So I don't think this is just like I'm going to play the best merfolk and vampires and dinosaurs, and they're all going to be just zombies whenever my commander comes in.
Well, there are different cards that say go and find like a merfolk, put in your hand. Discards on the field, you go and find a big old dragon instead of a merfolk, which counts as a merfolk. It's pretty cool.
I don't know, man. This just seems like it's a cool effect, but I think it's a little cheesy. And I think for the card itself, 5 mana, yes, the color identity here is amazing. As far as the creature itself, it's a 3/3, so it's never attacking. I'm never blocking with it, and it's incredibly slow with its token production.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about when you play this card, and I don't like it.
Oh, do explain.
I mean, that's pretty much my explanation. I won't lie to you.
Yeah, it's what we're all just saying right now. We don't really know what to do with it.
I feel like this is what you want to play if you want like a 5-color tribal deck, but then at the same time, if you want a 5-color tribal deck, go play Morphon.
This is basically just Maskwood Nexus in your command zone. I don't know. I think it's pretty good.
I think it's just pretty bad.
No, because Matt, that card you just described makes all creatures, or makes them all types.
Right.
This just makes it one type.
True. But in general, it's the same thing, right? They're all going to be the same type.
Same, but different.
Let's move on to the grades. Shane?
Like, I don't think I could say it better than Steven did. I'm confused and I don't like it, so I'm going to give this a C.
I'm actually going to give this a D. I mean, I just play whatever tribe you want with, tribe.
I disagree. I like this card a lot. I'm giving it a B.
You know, I'm actually really struggling as to when I would ever play this. Because I just don't feel like this is a good option for literally like any tribe deck. Or like, I don't think this is a good option at the helm for like any kind of tribal deck. I'm gonna give this an F just because I think this is probably just a worse version of whatever other competition you're looking at for tribes.
Thank you, David.
The average grade for Rukarumel is going to be a C. Moving on to the final Precon deck, that is Eldrazi Unbound. It's helmed by Zhulodok Void Gorger. It's 5 and a colorless for a 7/4 legendary creature Eldrazi. It says colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. David, you had the ability to go ahead and upgrade this deck with the 100 and 300. What do we think of Zhulodok Void Gorger?
So I love Eldrazi. And I think that the fact that they made an Eldrazi themed deck is really cool, given that it wasn't necessarily super Eldrazi themed, but whatever, I can move past that. What I am going to go ahead and say, though, is if it's okay with you guys, I have 5 things that I want to bring up with this card. And then I'm going to ask you guys a question, and then I'll just sit back quietly and listen to your spiels, okay?
Can't wait.
Okay, because I've had a lot of time to think about this card. So, my first thing going along with this is comparing this to the other legendary creatures that are going to helm these decks, this has the lowest toughness for its mana value ratio. That means to me, I'm not swinging with this. 6 mana for a 7-power creature is great and all, but to me at the same time, only having 4 toughness means it's probably still going to die to whatever utility creature my opponent has in play. So I feel like it's a little bit awkward there. My second thing here being is the fact that this is colorless. Having it be colorless is a massive restriction on the deck. That means all of your card draw, your interaction, your ramp, it's all going to be suboptimal. You don't have access to any of the good individual spells. So, I do think that is a very big negative associated with just a colorless commander in general. The other thing that goes into this is the generation of hate that this commander brings in. People are going to look at this and they're going to think, oh my goodness, he's going to cast this and then he's going to follow it up with this massive Eldrazi. But that's typically not what happens. You have to have a 7 mana spell in your hand for this to do anything. Because it doesn't have an ETB, it doesn't have a passive ability that's doing anything relevant whenever it's in play. It's only whenever you cast a 7-drop or greater. And whenever you do cast that 7-drop or greater, then you have to deal with the randomness aspect of Cascade. And that randomness aspect typically means you're ripping through your deck and you're grabbing a Mind Stone or something else that is small and not really big and smashy. So your opponents may have it in their brain that you're going to be able to rip off Emrakul, but you're never actually going to do that. Cascading means you have to you only hit something that's smaller than the card that you actually cast. So 9 out of 10 times you hit a small utility piece. You're not actually really getting a whole lot of value from this. The last thing here, just going along with it, is the lack of an enter the battlefield effect or anything kind of really relevant here. I don't know, man. I look at this and I think this card is more expensive than what it needs to be. It's smaller than what it probably should be. I mean, having no color identity, I feel like this could have been a 7/7 and it would have been fine. Or lower the cost on it. Make it do something. I feel like this kind of misses the mark for me on an Eldrazi commander, because most Eldrazi themed commanders either help you get Eldrazi in play because they cost $1 million and this doesn't, or they have this kind of like feeling to them that like they are going to end the game because they are so big and massive and have all these abilities stapled onto them. And for a legendary Eldrazi, this doesn't do that either. So
What's your question?
But you said it yourself. You said this is a hate generator, which means this coming into play is big and scary.
But that's my point. This is not big and scary. This is an expensive, colorless way for me to be able to get a Mind Stone in play. But that's not that's not the way that my opponents are going to perceive this. They're going to perceive this that I'm casting Big Eldrazi off my Cascade, but that's technically not what's going to happen. So I think that what's going to end up happening is you cast this and your opponents are just going to kill it. And because it doesn't have an ETB or a passive ability, you've spent 6 mana to do nothing. And the next turn, you get to spend 8 mana to do nothing. My question here to you guys is, can you think of a single legendary creature in all of Magic that makes for a worse Eldrazi commander than this? Because I can't.
That's not fair. You've had way too long to think about this.
No, not a legendary Eldrazi. Any legendary creature in the entire game.
That's worse than this?
Yeah, that is worse for Eldrazi tribal than this.
I mean, I could just throw a random legendary in there and say it's worse.
Go for it.
The squirrel.
Why would Chatterfang?
Yeah.
It gives you access to green, so you have access to ramp. It gives you access to black, so you have access to tutors and good removal.
But it doesn't say Eldrazi.
It doesn't say Eldrazi, but it has these other things that go along with the color identity that help me get my Eldrazi in play. I want to bring that up for a conversation because I feel like this deck is, not only is it not cohesive, this commander is bad. I think this is a commander that reads like it does a lot, but in reality, it actually doesn't do anything.
I will say that it's stratted aggressively. You mentioned that 7/4, you probably won't attack, but I feel like any card in Magic that is statted this way, you do attack. So it's like you attack someone that won't be able to trade up with this because this is statted extremely aggressively.
But you see, that's the thing though, is that this is a 6-drop.
Yeah.
Comparatively speaking, the other legendary creatures, the face commanders of these decks, one of them for 5 mana, you get a 5/5, and the other one for 5 mana, you get a 4/4 with Menace. Those are going to be able to do more than what this card will on attack. This will get blocked. The one with Menace, either A, can block this and then they'll both die, and that one is cheaper. Or the Sliver has the 5 toughness on it, so they'll both die, but I mean, at least that one has got enough toughness where I feel like you're starting to hit a comfortable point where you can start swinging in with it. I just feel like...
What about Commodore Guff?
Commodore Guff isn't a creature.
You can do whatever you want.
My point here just being is that, like, with there being such a massive negative on the fact that, like, there's no ETB, there's no passive, there's no colors in this, I think that this could have been an 8/8 and would have been fine.
I think that Cascade is still very powerful. Yes, you can hit a Mind Stone. Cascade is very random. But there are other cards, like Gishath, for example, that also have the potential to whiff. Whiffing is part of the game when you're playing random. but there's still the potential to not whiff, and that is terrifying.
But here's the thing: how do you have the potential to not whiff?
You don't,
Cast something for 10.
unless you
Okay.
scry.
So if I cast something for 10, if I have in my colorless deck managed to get up to the point where I have 10 mana and a 10 drop in my hand, that is a long time for me to sit back and not play the game while my opponents are playing the game. Like the whole argument here that I have with this is that the ramp in colorless it's bad. You don't have access to a good ramp.
I'm going to say one more thing before I'm going to let Steven go because he hasn't said anything yet. But I will say, David, I don't know if you forgot, you did play a 10 mana 10/10 in our game. So you could do it. You just didn't happen to have this card out when you did it.
And see, that's my thing, though, is that, yes, my deck was able to eventually cast a 10 mana 10/10 in our $100 video. But this card didn't contribute to that in any way.
Nah, because it was killed.
Even if it were, and okay, it was killed. It was killed immediately because of the amount of hate that this thing generates. This was a 6 mana spell that did nothing over the course of an entire game. And do you want that for your commander?
Blame Hunter.
I'm not blaming anybody. I think that Hunter's move during that game, and just like in general with this card, I feel like that was a correct decision, because for most people, if you're sitting across the board from this, you're not thinking, hey, they're going to rip off 2 small doesn't matter things from their cascade ability, assuming that they can even cast a 7 mana or greater spell. You're going to make the assumption, and just like the way that this thing feels, like they're going to get 2 big Eldrazi on the top, when that doesn't happen.
Boys. Man. Didn't I hear a lot of talk about this card right there, huh?
Yeah, you were
First of all,
patient.
welcome to our TED Talk. Welcome to our TED Talk on
apologize.
Zhulodok.
No, I like it.
David, out of the 5 points you talked about, I will say that I will agree with one. And that is the hate. And that is probably the only reason why this card is not going to be great. This card comes down, and you're right. You got to wait. There's really nothing that you can do about it. Because, I mean, getting to that 6 mana, I mean, what are you going to do? Get to 6 mana and then wait? Or hopefully you get to, I mean, shit, dude. 13 mana, and then you play this, and then play your 7 mana cost card for your Cascade to Cascade. It's too much waiting. So this comes down, and you're just hoping nobody has any removal for it. And that's the shittiest thing about this card. I don't really think cascading into a Mind Stone or a Soul Ring or any kind of ramp is that bad, because the deck's really expensive. Even if somebody removes this card, you're able to play it next turn because you've cascaded into some extra ramp. Now, okay, cool. You've cascaded in the ramp, you get to play this card again for it to die. Well, you know what? I got a shit ton of mana now, and I'm going to start dropping bombs. Do I think that there's a shittier commander than this for Eldrazi? No. Do I love the fact that they brought this kind of like cascade fact to colorless? Yes, I think this is really great. I definitely don't hate it as much as what was talked about.
Let's move on to the grades for Zhulodok. David, what are you giving it?
I'm gonna. This is a hard F. I think that if you use this as your commander, your deck is actively worse.
I disagree with you. I still think Cascade's very powerful. I think there's enough mana rocks to make this happen, to ramp. I'm going to give it a C.
I think I'm going to be in the middle of the road with you, Hunter. I'm going to give it a C.
As everyone knows, I love fun, quirky things, and this is right up my alley. This card is definitely not an A, but this is a B in my book. I love the fact that this card is a thing.
Well, the average grade for Zhulodok is going to be a C. And moving on to the final commander we're talking about today. This is the backup for the Eldrazi Unbound. It is Omarthis Ghostfire Initiate. It's XX for a 0/0 legendary creature, Spirit Naga. It says it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on another colorless creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Omarthis. And whenever Omarthis dies, manifest a number of cards from the top of your library equal to the number of counters on it. This is a very weird card. I love the word Ghostfire. I think they should use that more. Dave, what do we think about this as a commander?
David, can I say something before you start, actually?
Yeah.
You asked the question on the last card, about a worse colorless commander?
Yes,
This is my vote.
I think this. I actually like him a lot more.
Do tell.
I mean, look, okay. I actually like this commander a lot more than the last one, given that they move in very different directions. Whenever I look at this card, I don't think Eldrazi at all. In fact, I think that his inclusion in an Eldrazi Unbound deck is really weird. But I do think that this is really cool. And the reason why is because if you play around with modular or any of like the small artifacts that can manipulate counters, this dude can get pretty nutty. So I do like that. Obviously, yes, I still do think that being colorless is a downside, and I do think that there are still better commanders even for that strategy. I think that having a lack of a color identity is pretty rough. But I do still see that there's quite a bit that you can do with this, and a lot of the support that you would have for this card, most of those creatures that you would be playing with, they're pretty cheap. So they're going to be coming in at 1, 2, or 3 mana for the most part, and there's a lot of counter manipulation that you can do down at that level. So I actually like this card a lot more than the previous one.
But wouldn't this just be a big dumb beater?
How?
Well, you're only going to grow this, right? Is that what you want?
Well, no, you're going to be growing all of your things, and then eventually, I mean, you'll be manifesting on top of that too. So even in the case that this thing dies, okay, I get your point that you say that this is big dumb beater. I don't actually care how big this thing gets with its +1/+1 counters on it. I'm looking more so at that second or third ability. So whenever you put one or more +1/+1 counters on another colorless creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on this one. So I'm not actually wanting to actively put +1/+1 counters on this. I'm trying to like make sure that I take advantage of like tiny robots that give out +1/+1 counters. That way, this is just passively getting bigger.
Big dumb beater.
Okay. Yes, this does become a big beater. But I mean, I think that this pretty easily becomes much bigger than the Eldrazi that we just talked about. And then on top of that, whenever it dies, you also manifest cards from the top of your library. So it also forms like kind of a pseudo card advantage.
True. This one it dies, so if it gets exiled, it's nothing.
Well, yeah.
Okay, yes, but I mean, like, whenever the other one dies or gets exiled, it does nothing.
I'm just saying. Exiling effects are pretty common in EDH. Omarthis, I feel like, is a colorless Hydra, which is different. I don't know. I find this card to be not very good.
I like that. I like that description.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be really interesting because I feel like there's a lot more that you can do to play around with this. And I feel like it kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like a low to the ground, just like drop your affinity-esque style cards, where this can just kind of like explode and get out of control really quickly.
I think it's interesting. Don't know if I'd play it, but it's interesting.
I also find it interesting that this, like you said, David, this card was in the Eldrazi, and when you cascaded this, it just dies. Just really weird inclusion.
So if you have mana up still, whenever you cascade into this, you can sink mana into it so that it doesn't die. But I mean, you have to have at least 2 mana up, and if you're dropping a spell with mana value 7 or greater, you probably don't have any mana.
This card's shitty.
You both are just stark contrast to these last 2 cards.
I just don't like this card, man. I just comes in as a XX whatever cost. Whenever you put counters on it or another creature, put it on this thing too. So you really don't care about putting counters on this.
Yeah, it seems like it just happens.
Just happens. I mean, and then when it dies, you manifest top cards of your library. So then you got some small itty bitty creatures.
I mean, it could be bigger.
Well, they come in as pretty sure manifests are 2/2s, right? And
Yeah,
it's an instant or a sorcery or land, you know? Yeah. So I mean that's my biggest thing about this. If you manifest your ramp and it just goes to the graveyard, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it.
See, but like that being my counter to that is I don't think you need much ramp in this style of deck. I think it's low enough to the ground where you can get by with a fairly minimal package.
Let's move on to the grades. Omarthis, David, what are you giving it?
Well, I do like this one significantly more than the last commander that we talked about. So this one is a D.
You know, I think it's worse than the last commander we talked about. It is a D for me as well.
Are we all in agreement? I think I'm gonna give it a D.
Yeah, I'm oh boy, I'm gonna give this an F. I honestly just do not like this card whatsoever.
All right, well, Omarthis gets the average grade of a D, but Ghostfire seems pretty cool. That is going to do it for us today. I hope you guys liked that video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, why are you waiting? Hit the subscribe button. You're watching all these cool videos. Might as well just keep watching. And also in the description, you will find links to our Instagram, our Twitter, and our TikTok. That's @GuysThatMagic for each one. Also, comment down below. Let us know. Do you agree with our grades? Do you disagree with our grades? Do you think we missed something about one of these commanders? Let us know. Always interested to hear what you guys have to say. And until the next video, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Later.
Bye.
Bye bye.